Hello there. It's Maurice Calhoun, the Hope Dealer. I felt the need to put the finishing touches on the cave. So this is part 3. And the finishing touches would deal with what happens after the cave. We have to remember that the cave is our classroom. It's that reset. It's that place of solace. It's that place of understanding. I think about that song, Take Me Back. Take me back to that place where I first believed. Take me back, that special place, that Sunday school place where I became who I am, where I got those values that carried me, where I got those values that led to the reminders that formulated who I am. So take me back to that cave. But that then sets up a layup, that sets up an alley-oop to what happens after the cave. So let's deal with David a little bit after the cave. The first thing he did after the cave, remember the 400 men engaged him. They were the broken, they were the disconcerted, they were depressed, they were the broken. The first thing he did after that affirmation by the 400 was that he went and rescued his family. Well, that's what us responsible people do. We're responsible leaders because we're in charge of the guidance and the provision for our families. Take care of your house first. And then take care of your community as an extension of your house. That was the first thing after the cave. A rededication to your house. And then the second stage of after the cave is that you're going to be wounded by some of your friends, by some of the people you're loyal to. David saved a city called Keilah, but then they betrayed him after he saved them. They started snitching on him in the gang culture. They snitched on him. But David did not retaliate as a typical gangster would. One of the worst things you can do in the gang culture is to snitch. David did not retaliate because, again, he became a responsible leader in stage 1 after the cave when he saved his family. A responsible leader doesn't care about who's snitching because his confidence is in something higher than himself. So he was able to lead without entitlement. That's leadership. So then we need to think about something else that happened in stage 2 of the cave. He went to save the city of Keilah. They snitched on him, was disloyal, yet David did not retaliate. So he was further maturing into that responsible leader. And then something else happened. A woman named Abigail came to see him. Abigail was Nabal's wife, who was a former business partner of David's. Nabal was a powerful man. He was a strong man. He held tightly to all of his people and he held tightly to his family. He was a ruler. But somebody told Abigail that David was mad at Nabal, her husband, and that David was coming to kill them. So David had a little bit of a departure from that maturation that I just talked about of being a responsible leader. So Abigail told her maidservants to fry up some chicken, make some potato salad, make some greens with some hot sauce in them, and make a sweet potato pie, and to load up the donkey. And the manservant said, well, Miss Abigail, don't you need some of us men to go with you? Because we heard that the armies are advancing. She said, no, I'm going by myself. I'm going as a stand-up woman. I'm going to save my family and my farms, all of my people that work for me. All of the people that even work for that disloyal husband of mine, Nabal. I'm a stand-up woman. I'm going to see the king. Miss Abigail, no, it's dangerous. I'm going to see the king. So it's on the way to seeing the king, she met up with the armies and said, hey, why don't you all sit down and eat? Huh? Yeah, sit down and eat. Soldiers started tasting that food and they were like, oh, this is some good food. Then the king came there. She said, David, thank you for what you're not about to do. Thank you for not killing my family. Thank you for not killing my employees, my staff members, my maidservants, my manservants. Thank you for not taking my farms. And thank you for your mercy over that husband of mine. David was confused. Wait a minute, you came up here by yourself? Knowing what you knew? David was both flabbergasted and impressed. David was thinking about God and saying, God, who is this woman that would come up here with such boldness? In other words, what Abigail was saying to the king was, King, eagles don't hang out with chickens. Don't hang out with chickens. Don't snitch because they're chickens. You hear save the people of Keilah and then they snitched on you. They're chickens. In stage 2, that was the most important thing in stage 2 of After the Cave, was when Abigail came and reaffirmed to the king, King, you're an eagle. And don't hang out with chickens. Reverend Henry Green, an AME pastor, presiding elder in the Miami area, he preached a sermon long time ago saying, when you're hanging out with some chickens. Oh my God. Then there's stage 3. Stage 3 was that further maturation as a responsible leader. David had his enemies cornered, but he had compassion and mercy on them. He could have taken Saul's life, but he didn't. He could have taken Saul's life on several occasions, but he didn't. Further maturation as a responsible leader. He could have taken it. He had the power. He chose mercy. Here's a man who had his enemy's life in his hands, and he chose mercy. A responsible leader. But then, stage 4. While David was away, when he was distracted, when he was looking the other way, many of his family, his children, his wives, his people, his armies were taken captive and their lands burned down. David went back to his source, to God, and said, hey, what should I do next? Well, through his power, through God, he went and reclaimed his family. He went and reclaimed his land. Had to rebuild it because it was burned, but responsible leadership says, I'm going to stand up for my people. I'm going to fight for what's mine. I'm going to fight for what's mine. A responsible leader. We got children today that are depressed, that are suffering from suicides, that are suffering from attempted suicides, suffering from suicidal ideations. We got kids that are fighting in school. We got bullying going on. We got all kinds of stuff going on with our children. Where are the Davids today that are going to reclaim our children, as David did in stage 4 of After the Cave? Where are the people that are going to reclaim our children's behaviors? I go on my Facebook feed and all I see is young girls fighting. Young girls showing parts of their body that they shouldn't be showing on the internet. I'm most ashamed of all of the Popeyes fights and the McDonald's fights over cold fries. I'm most ashamed that somebody skipped somebody in line, someone in line at a McDonald's, and the mother got shot. The mother was a mother of 4 children. Right down the street from Spelman College in Atlanta. Where are the Davids today that are going to go and see about his people? But then stage 5. Stage 5, David was anointed the king of all of what is now, quote unquote, the Middle East, whatever that is. He was the king for 40 years. He eventually married Abigail, because when Abigail went home to tell her sorry husband what she had done to stand up for her family, Nabal said, I'm going to take a little nap and then I'm going to deal with you when I get up. Well, God made sure he didn't get up. When David heard about Nabal's death, he recognized the year of mourning whenever a spouse dies, and then he went to see Abigail a year later and married her. Abigail became the greatest queen in Afro-Judaic history. In other words, when I thought about After the Cave, I thought about restoration. Well, God restored David. No. I thought about reclamation. Well, David reclaimed his throne. No. It was fulfillment. It was a progression to fulfillment, because David never lost anything that he needed to be restored for. He never needed to reclaim something that he needed to reclaim. It was always his. The cave was just that inflection point. You see, I have a math degree and I studied a lot of differential equations and calculus. And one of the most integral points of study that I had in college was around points of inflection. You see, a point of inflection is where the object is changing its speed and acceleration, either positive or negative, to the point of 0. At the point of inflection, the speed and the acceleration is 0. So a lot of defense attorneys, they use points of inflection to prove intent or non-intent. I've testified in cases in courts around points of inflection. A point of inflection is your cave. That's where you've stopped. You're neither accelerating or decelerating. You've stopped. Look up in calculus, m is equal to 0 at the point of inflection. M is the slope of the curve, whether it's going up or down. But at the point of inflection, it's 0. That's your cave. Your cave is your point of inflection. Your cave is your source of your curriculum. That's the curriculum. One key point is that when you're wounded at the house of a friend, oh, that's part of the cave. When you got to go save your family, that's part of the cave. When you got to go and save people that don't want to be saved, that's part of the cave. When you got to go and save people that would then turn around and snitch on you, that's part of the cave. Thomas's disbelief of what happened to Jesus was part of Jesus' cave. Jesus went and asked him, why did you need to see my wounds? But Jesus just lifted up his shirt and said, hey, you're blessed now. In other words, one of the key things about David that we can garner from this short take is that he was a responsible leader who was powerful enough to forgive. There's power in forgiveness. There's release in forgiveness. Oh, after the cave, David became a man. I heard a sermon by the Reverend Harry Dawkins many years ago, and the sermon was entitled, When God Needs a Man. And he talked about David after the cave. Thank you so much. I just wanted to close this with healer, healer, healer. Healer, healer, healer. Healer, healer, healer. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Thank you, thank you, thank you.